If you think you have it all figured out, that's basically the day you're going to fail. Is it really going up in value, or is it the metric by which we measure real estate going down in value? If your main goal is to make money, you're probably going to fail. If you bring value, the people will come.
Hey everyone, Dave Menz, Laundromat Millionaire, coming to you again for another great episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. Me and my beautiful wife, Carla, we're here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I am super excited for the guest that we have today. I'm going to let Carla introduce our guest in a second, but he's somebody that I've been kind of admiring, getting to know from afar on social media. I think he has a ton of value to bring to the show today. I think you're going to learn a lot from him. So get those pads and papers out. And by the way, yes, he is a laundromat owner too. So we're going to dig into that. We're going to dig into his laundromat journey, why he's doing what he's doing, and the lessons that he sees valuable in life. And we're going to try to lay those out there for you so that you can be more successful than maybe you were last year. So Carla, do you want to introduce our guest?
Yes, I am excited for our guest today, and he is much more than just a laundromat owner. Today we have with us Jesse Denton. He is a real estate investor and agent and owns the Wishy Washy Laundromat in Homedale, Idaho. So Jesse, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate being here.
Hey man, when we're done with this show and you get that house built for you there, that's a pretty nice view. For those of you that are listening to this on audio, looks like he's, is that a lakefront house? Is that what we're looking at here?
This is actually the Snake River. So I'm in Southwest Idaho. Yeah, okay. we live on the Snake River, right outside of Homedale, Idaho.
Okay, gotcha.
Nice, it's pretty.
Well, listen, man, we're excited to have you here. We know that you have a lot to offer, and we're not sure how we're going to fit it all in, so we want to dive right into it if that's okay.
Let's do it.
All right. So what we like our guests to do to just kind of start out each episode is to give us a little bit of a backstory. We always say kind of your childhood. What was your upbringing like, your parents, as much as or as little as you want to share with us of that upbringing, that nurturing, and what makes Jesse who he is today?
Great. Okay. So I was born and raised in a small town called Redding, California, about 80,000 people roughly. And born in a middle-class family, both hardworking parents. My mom owned a salon for 28 years. My dad was a painting and wallpaper contractor. Both just really, really hard workers. When about 2006 or so, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And, one of the things he told me, so I had just entered the mortgage lending field. A friend of mine introduced me to it, and I was quickly learning about leverage and finance and housing and real estate. And my dad got sick, and around 2008, right before the financial crisis hit, he was terminal and he was passing away. And he told me, he pulled me aside and said, Jesse, don't be like me. Don't die with your work boots on. And it still gives me like chills to hear it because up until about a week before my dad passed away, I was helping him on jobs. And he literally worked up until the week that he died. And so I had been in lending and it was going well. I bought my first house. I saw the appreciation that I was making. I saw the rents that I was bringing in from renting out rooms. So I started wash, rinsing, and repeating by buying up as many houses as I could. I ended up with 3 of them before the 2008 crisis hit.
How old were you at this point?
I bought my first one. I think it started construction when I was 18, and I think I closed on it either when I was 18 or 19.
Wow.
And so then and my parents gave me, lent me, a chunk, maybe 10,000 or something for a down payment. I refinanced and paid them off before I did my second home and third and subsequent. And so when the crisis hit, I only had about 2 to 3 months worth of reserves, and I was extremely leveraged. I was leveraged at, before the crisis hit at near 100%. And then after the crisis hit, I was 120% leveraged, and so when all the tenants stopped paying at once and poof, what I call my little real estate empire vanished overnight, it seems like. So my then girlfriend and I didn't have a place to go. We were successful. Now we're not. I filed bankruptcy 1.1 or 1.2 million in my early 20s. And if it weren't for my grandparents passing away, I wouldn't have had a roof over my head. I wouldn't have had a place to go. So when as it turned out, they passed away, and my girlfriend and I moved into that house. Well, we quickly found that there was no work. I mean, this is '08. Everybody's looking for a job, unemployment through the roof. And I finally got a lead on a job that was about an hour and a half away from my house. My truck had been repossessed. I had no credit, no anything. So I buy this little used Yukon off Craigslist. I mean, the thing's a junker, and drive it down there, and I park it on the street in different areas, different neighborhoods, for a couple of days at a time, usually 5 to 6, 7 days at a time. And so I'd sleep out of my truck down there to work, because I knew, just pulled it out, I couldn't afford to drive back and forth and then pay rent to my then parents for this house that was my grandparents. So I stayed down there in my truck, and I did that for about a year until I kind of got back on my feet and found work locally. But I always knew, that in the back of my head was my dad saying, Jesse, don't die with your work boots on, and having him actually done it was frightening, because, he worked so hard, and he never really got to that retirement, never got to enjoy life. So my brother actually bought me a book by a guy named Mike.Kelly. He's a gold and silver guy. And it was one of the many rabbit holes I fell down. And it was mostly about like fiscal and monetary policy, what the pillar of lies that our dollar and our currency is built on. And I fell down this hole of wanting to learn more, learn the rules of the game. The next thing, I bought another book by Ken McElroy, who's a famous real estate investor. And so anyways, in 2011, I had no credit, I had no money, and I found a house at an auction. And I went to the real estate agent I knew at the time, and I said, hey, I'd like to buy this house. He says, Jesse, don't do it. It's overvalued, or it's overpriced, just the starting bid was overpriced. And long story short, I grabbed my sister-in-law, and I told her, I said, put on your nicest clothes. We're going to go down to this auction in Sacramento. We're going to buy this house. So we drive down to this auction, and there's a guy there who's like a moderator. Well, they won't tell you the reserve price of the assets, but I went up there and I gave him one of the only $100 bills I had, and I said, tell me if my number is close. And he goes, you're real close. You're off by about a couple grand, a couple bucks. So anyways, I'm in a suit and tie, which I'm not a suit and tie kind of guy. I don't like much suits. And we go down there like we're somebody, and we're sitting in this room, and we bid on this house, and we win the auction. And she looks at me, like, what are you going to do now? And I said, I don't know. I have no money. So I go in the other room, and I call my brother up, who bought me that book, and who's always been a supporter, but he had never been a financial supporter of any kind, just supporting me in what I did. I called him up. I said, hey, I'm in a pickle, but I think we're in good shape here. I need $5,000 for the earnest money right now for this property that we just bought. I talked him into loaning me the money. And then all I got to do is raise the money to actually buy the house with no credit. So long story short, I rounded up through basically what was back then, like I call it like redneck crowdsourcing, a couple bucks here, a couple bucks there.
You were one of the original crowdsourcing people, huh?
I was a pioneer, didn't even. So anyways, I go back and I slap this contract on my broker's desk. I said, congratulations, we're in escrow. And he says, oh, you overpaid this and that. Well, looking back now, it's funny. There's a house on 10 acres in California, creekfront property, about 1,700 square foot with a shop, and I paid $74,500 for it. Wow. So I had no money, so I think my mom opened up a Home Depot card for me. I maxed out all my girlfriend's credit cards, and in 90 days I was done with this rehab and sold it for double what we had into it. So nice. Right then I realized the power of real estate, and then I leveraged that into apartments.
Are you renovating your store or building a new one? Tired of persistent and expensive plumbing issues like I was? Get an HM Company drain trough to give those drain lines a fighting chance against the constant wear and tear of laundromat life. Sizing is fully customizable to meet your needs, and lead times are a maximum of 2 weeks. I've used them in my stores in Cincinnati for years, and I'm installing them in my new store, which is opening soon. Visit their website today at draintroughs.com and contact your distributor to order your drain trough today.
So at that time, I leveraged it and I did a 1031 exchange, what they call diversification exchange, into 6 units in California there.
Can you explain to people what a 1031 exchange is, just real quick?
Sure. So a 1031 is a tax-deferred exchange. It's not a tax-free exchange, but if you roll gains from a property, now I learned subsequently from more research, flips are actually disallowed from them. It's supposed to be a property held for investment, so like a rental property. I didn't learn that until after I had done it, but a 1031 allows you to defer any gains. So on that particular property, I think we made $100,000 on it. Instead of having to write a check to the government for $35,000, I can defer that and roll the full $100,000. And when you're working with leverage, if you can leverage at 8-to-1 or 5-to-1, then what you're putting down on the next property really matters. And so it just helps you buy bigger and leverage up to bigger and bigger properties before you ultimately will have to pay tax at the.
So essentially what you're saying with a 1031 exchange, and I know we're not accountants and lawyers here, but so we don't give financial advice, as they say. But basically what you're doing is you're taking the equity out of a property, and rather than having to pay taxes on it and take what's left and invest it in another property, the government allows you to take the equity out, keep it liquid for a very short period of time, as long as you reinvest it into another property. That's a very simplistic example of what you did. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. It's they can get very tricky, but there are a lot of things you can do. So you can do a diversification exchange, which is what I did, where you sell one property and 1031 into multiple properties. You can do consolidation exchanges, and it actually does apply to laundromats because of the commercial real estate is a prime candidate for a 1031. So I think it's important that if you're going to be in the laundry industry or real estate, that you learn and understand how a 1031 works.
Did you do a 1031 yourself, or did you have a professional help you with that?
So I definitely had a professional help me. I read a book, a gentleman by the name of Gary Gorman. He literally wrote the book on 1031 exchanges. As it turned out, the intermediary that I start now, an intermediary is when you sell a property, they're the people that hold on to the funds before it moves to the new property.
So you can't just put it in your checking account, right?
Nope, that'll dissolve the exchange and you'll pay tax. So as it turns out, the intermediary made a few mistakes, and I got a hold of Gary Gorman, the author of that book, and he came to bat for me and helped me basically win a discrepancy with the title company to the tune of quite a few. It was quite a substantial financial amount that it was awarded back to me because of an error of theirs. So I really learned that just solidified the power of educating yourself. I'm just jumping from book to book, trying to, figure this out for myself. I didn't really have a mentor in real estate. It was all from reading books is how I built up. So then I ended up having those 6 properties, but we were still renting. We were still renting a home, and it wasn't until I think 2014 when I finally was able to buy a home out here in Idaho. Was like the first time we were actually able to own a home again. So
what made you decide to go to Idaho from California?
It's just the government there overreaches. I'm a limited government person. I want my privacy, my freedom. The Constitution is pretty clear on a lot of issues that get trampled on in California. I'm of the mentality like that. You stay out of my business and I'll stay out of yours. That's it, and so that's kind of how I was raised, and that's my beliefs. So California just has a tendency to overreach, overtax, and taxation. On my little rant on that is it's a frictional loss that if a guy has $100 and each time I take that $100 and I give it to the cashier at the gas station, he has to pay $10 in tax. then he takes that $90 and he goes and buys, groceries, and that person's paying $8 in tax, and that continues on. It takes very few transactions before 100% of that dollar has gone to taxation. So it's a very frictional loss that happens in transactions, and that's one of the reasons I've studied up on currencies, on currency debasement, and learned the rules of the game so that I know what game I'm playing in and how to win it.
Wow. Everybody, let's take pause for a second here and write that down in your notebooks if you're taking notes, because that's an example of what me and Carla always say. 80% of business is transferable from industry to industry. That's an example that you could apply that lesson to every industry on the planet, every investment strategy that's out there. That's some valuable stuff. So let me get back to California for a second. Did I understand you right that you had 6 properties in California and then moved to Idaho? Did you take those properties with you, or no, I'm joking. Did you liquidate those and then move your money to Idaho?
So that's funny you mention that, because that is one of the downsides of real estate is you can't take it with you when you go somewhere. So you rely on other management, which is fine. You need to be able to trust your management company, but so when I got here, I got nervous of the real estate market because it was different. And so for the first year, I said, let me learn this market. Let me figure out what's going on. So I took a job in North Dakota, all the while keeping going, working on my real estate license in Idaho, and what have you. So I bought my first Idaho investment property while I was out in North Dakota, sight unseen. It's a property we still have today. And then eventually dissolved that exchange. So one of the downsides to a 1031 exchange is they can force your hand because of timelines. So if you have a great offer on a property that you can't resist, say they're paying you 110% of market value and it makes sense to sell that property, there's times involved, 45 days to identify and 180 days to close on what they call your replacement property. And if you can't find one that pencils, sometimes it makes you can make a case that it's better to dissolve the exchange and pay the tax on it. So that's what we did. We paid the tax on it and started fresh over here when the proper deals came up. I'm a big believer that there's good deals in bad markets and bad deals in good markets. Right now, it's hard for me to buy a property because valuations are high, and being a value investor, like my core strategy is to buy at discounts, buy when there's value, and sell when things are overvalued. Right. But it's with real estate, everybody says like, well, real estate always goes up. Okay, I'll give you that. But what people don't understand, and this goes across like every asset class there is it real estate going up in value, or is it the metric by which we measure real estate going down in value, right? So, they say nobody ever looks back 30 years and says, boy, I wish I wouldn't have sold that, I wish I would have sold that property. Because over time, real estate always goes up in nominal value. But, you have different factors driving that value. There's the supply and demand fundamentals there, which are based on demographics and government and a lot of different factors. But the metric by which we measure it is a flawed metric. So we're measuring it by a dollar that is designed from the get-go to lose value. And in fact, the Fed comes out and shoots for a target of 2% of a loss of purchasing power every single year. So, most people still think our dollar is based on a gold standard. Well, since the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1971, it's poof. It's a fiat currency, which fiat means by government decree. So the only thing backing our currency is the military. That is it. And the fact that it's the only currency that we can pay our taxes, and that's one of the things that still gives it utility. So then the question becomes, how do you know what asset class is overvalued or what is undervalued? You look at oil and the Dow and S&P, crypto, which I'm a fan of. Look at real estate, and how do you know which asset class to enter, right? So one thing Mike Maloney taught me is it's pretty simple to take the dollar value out of an asset. If you want to figure out which asset classes are overvalued and undervalued, you simply have to divide price of one in dollars by the price of another. And that's going to give you a number. put that on a chart. Then you go back the year before and you divide, say, the price of housing by gold, and you plot this over time. And what it does is it takes the dollar completely out of the equation. It says, how many ounces of gold does it take to buy a median single family home? Or how many barrels of oil does it take to buy one share of the Dow? So it completely removes the dollar from it, because if the goalposts are always moving, if the dollar is always losing value, it's very hard to tell which asset classes are overvalued or undervalued territory. So it's hard to know where to put your money.
And so when you say you're a value investor, that's what you base on the value of something on. Is what do you use one of those metrics or all of those metrics, or?
Yeah, so I'll typically compare things, assets against assets, not against their historic price, because a dollar, or excuse me, an ounce of gold has always been an ounce of gold. It will usually buy, over the course of the last 5,000 years, it'll usually buy a really nice, well-tailored suit, and it has forever. One Bitcoin will always be one Bitcoin, but if the dollar is failing, it's falling at or faster than the rate the Fed has prescribed, that people see it going up and they see, like, well, hey, I'm making money, right? I bought a Bitcoin at $20,000 and now it's $42,000. I'm making money. And so the Ponzi scheme that's going on here, and Madoff himself could have done it better. The Ponzi scheme is that they designed the currency to lose money. Therefore, assets have to rise in nominal price. And when they do, the IRS takes that price, that gain that you've made, and they tax you on it. So here, the reason the asset has increased in price is because your currency is losing value, and then they get to collect tax on it. So the game is really stacked against the W-2 employee. It's really stacked against the uneducated. And I don't mean uneducated as far as college degree. I've never went to college. I don't think I'd have lasted a week. It's just, you have to understand the rules of the game. So I've took it upon myself to go online and watch podcasts like yours, watch Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money, follow Peter Schiff and the Robert Kiyosaki's of the world, and I've learned to use leverage and to use, just to look for value in asset classes and pursue that. And that's kind of what led me into the laundromat thing. Is I was looking for a building. I found a building that I liked that was a fair value. And I thought, well, what can I do to have other people pay for this building for me? Anytime I want something, I don't, if I want a new pickup truck, I don't run out and write a $60,000 check for a pickup truck. I go put $60,000 down on an asset that'll pay me, whatever it is, say $1,000 a month. And then I go finance that pickup truck for 7 years at $1,000. At the end of 7 years, those rents have covered my pickup truck, which is now paid off. And I still have those rents coming in for another, whatever it is, 23 years or whatever. So I try to find anything I can to make I don't want to say make, but to have other people pay for the assets that I want. And so how I got into this laundromat deal was I went out looking at a triplex, and next door to it was a rundown laundromat, and I wanted the building. I knew I could get it at a price, so I started negotiating with the owner, and a year and a half later, I bought the building, and I put a laundromat back in place to pay myself rent for that building that I wanted.
Had that been a laundromat before?
It had been shut down for 25 years probably.
Holy cow.
And
wow.
Yeah, and another laundromat sprung up in town, but it was a zombie mat. It was, and I learned that phrase from you guys. It was a zombie mat. It was just ran into the ground. All they did was pull money out, and so I knew there was room to improve. So we ended up opening up 6 months ago, and we've been crushing it. We've been doing well with it.
Did you even do any demographic analysis? I mean, I know you talked about the competitor. Did you have any mentors in the laundromat? Like, did you have a distributor you talked to, or you just jumped in?
I absolutely did. No. Oh, no. So that's, I'm definitely a risk taker. I love a good calculated risk. But no, I don't typically just dive into things. I looked at it. I got a hold of a few distributors, which was based on information I learned off of Facebook, guys like Dave. And I had a couple guys like him that kind of took me under their wing and helped, help me hold my hand, basically, right? Like you can be an expert in, aerodynamics or hydrodynamics, but that doesn't mean you're good at laundromats, right? So like you need somebody to mentor and guide you on that. So talking to Dave, talking to a few other guys online that have helped me that are laundromat owners and operators. Then I got a hold of a distributor and we ran the demos. And it's a small town. It's a town of 3,500 people. But the laundromat has only been open 6 months, and it's doing about 2.5 times the projections that I penciled the building out at. So I was pretty conservative with my numbers, and the distributor kept telling me, no, it's going to do better. And I said, I don't care what you say. Like this is what I see. And
why did he feel it was going to do better than you thought?
He knew the competitor, and he knew how he was running the business. And I penciled the thing on like 4 turns a day, and it's doing considerably better than that. It might have been 3 turns now that I think about it. And so yeah, it's doing quite better than I thought it was. And I'm really conservative when it comes to numbers like that. I want to make sure that they're, having been a student of 2008. Living out of the back of your Yukon and eating top ramen, you learn some things. And you got a lot of time at night by yourself to read books and study.
Pain is a valuable teacher. Pain is a really good teacher.
Yep.
I would agree with that.
The little your son that you say, son, watch out. Don't touch your butt to the fireplace. Don't get so close. You can tell him, but he ain't going to listen until he finds out. And then that's all he needs to know anymore. Right.
Yeah. So do us a favor. Walk us through the process of building this laundromat. You found the equipment distributor. Had you already closed on the property? How fast did this happen? And what were the lessons that you learned along the way? And then when you get there, if you could just share with us what kind of equipment you have in the store. It sounds like it's not a huge store, but I've seen pictures and it's very, very nice. You did a great job. The name, it's a little wishy-washy, but I see what I did there. But yeah, walk us through that. Tell us about that.
Okay. I just wanted, like I said, I wanted the building. I looked to see if there was a way to make it viable. I got the building. That's one of the great things about becoming an investor is it tweaks your mind a little bit. So you become a lot less, not perfectly unemotional, but become a lot less emotional about properties you're buying. If you miss it, you miss it. It wasn't your dream home. You have to kiss a lot of frogs to find them anyway. So you just move right along. And so I negotiated with the guy for a year and a half. And his name was Mike, and I'd call him every couple of weeks and say, hey, Mike, want to grab a beer? You want to talk? Nope. And then he'd pretty much hang up on me. And it got to the point where he'd just say, hey, Jesse, no thanks for the beer. Talk to you next month, and he'd hang up on me. And so he finally calls me about a year and a half later, and we meet out there. And he tells me finally I never speak first. I always let them speak first and what he wants for the place. And he tells me his number, and I reached my hand out and said, Mike, I'm sorry to have wasted your time, and he wouldn't let me leave. He kept trying to sell me on the building. So I knew right there that I had some leverage. And so I offered a third of what he was asking for the building. And a day later, he called me back and agreed. So it's just it's a 1,600 square foot laundromat. And there wasn't a square inch we didn't touch. I did a lot of 99% of the work myself, which I enjoy. It's not scalable. It's not from an investment perspective, it's not the best, but I like doing it. It's one of those things that is partly a hobby and partly and I like to learn. I really like to learn, and so I taught myself how to do everything, and I do flips and rehabs as well. So I had a general understanding of the systems in place. But yeah, it took me probably 8 months or so. We paused for COVID because it was a black swan. As an investor, you can't think of everything. If you think you have it all figured out, that's basically the day you're going to fail. if you think that, oh, I have every angle covered, you're looking for trouble. And so when COVID came, we pumped the brakes because this was a new thing to us. We had never seen it coming. It was out of left field, and so we pumped the brakes.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jesse. Were you in the middle of this project when COVID hit?
We were about 3 weeks in.
Wow, no kidding.
3 weeks into it, I was doing the demo, and I had the roof off of the building, completely off of it. The equipment was out. The old equipment was out, and we were starting to saw it cut up the floor and get going. And so we pumped the brakes. During that time, the triplex next door came available for sale. And talking to him, so this is the triplex that a year or two earlier I had tried to buy and I missed it. I underbid the nearest, or the guy that ended up buying it. Well, we had some trees on the property line that needed to go. So I start communicating with him, and I could tell every time I called him about something, he just seemed so inconvenienced. And so I told him, I said, hey, let's get rid of that property. You don't need that property. And so I ended up getting that thing for a song. And and we used that to run because it was a propane laundromat. So we used that to access, and the price of that building was kind of offset by what I was going to have to spend to get my gas line there. Of course, I didn't have to disclose that to him that I had ulterior motives, but I needed a gas line to my property, and buying that triplex shortened my gas line by probably 100 feet. So it was pretty helpful.
Nice.
So so we put all new Hitch equipment in there, and I tried to do everything pretty state of the art. We did have a competitor in town, and I learned, from Dave and from others that if you don't bring value, if your main goal is to make money, you're probably going to fail. If your goal, and this goes across the board, this goes with Dave and I talked about this previously. Slumlords are the same way. If all you care about is your bottom line on the bottom of your P&L at the end of the year, you're gonna leave money on the table, and you're probably gonna fail. If you look at it like, how can I create a safe, affordable housing situation, clean, affordable housing? If you bring value, the people will come.
Yeah.
And so, like Dave said, it crosses industries, and so that's what we did, is we had to bring value. So we do the free Wi-Fi. We have credit card readers on every machine. We have an in-wall ATM, coin changers, arcades, vending. We tried to bring everything together so that we beat the competitor on every single front. We spent a bunch of money to put in a full ADA bathroom because he got tired of cleaning bathrooms and locked his out. He had no bathroom.
Wow.
No Wi-Fi, no credit card acceptance, no soap vending. I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah, people ask me all the time when I'm making conversations or comparisons, and I use word like value proposition, which is kind of a broad term, and I'm aware of that. They're like, what is value proposition? How do I define it? And I always say it's a conglomeration of every piece of value that you provide to your customers. And of course, some are going to value a bathroom, for example, more than others. But I think it's pretty safe to say everybody values a bathroom when they put their personal laundry in a washer dryer and
they're
it's
stuck
locked
there for
and
a
they're
couple
stuck.
hours.
They don't want to leave. They don't want to come back and find out their laundry's gone because they had to run up to the road to Target to use the bathroom. So, it's not I've always found, and I find this interesting, I've always found that a lot of people that come to the laundromat industry, they want to approach the industry as a science. Look at it from the lens of a broad, big picture, macro picture. How can I serve this community in a better way? And you talked about it, not drilling down on when I say science, I'm referring to numbers sometimes. How do we drill down on that? Well, just look for ways to serve people and look for ways to wow people. And the difference in a bathroom that's functional and dirty but open, and the difference in a bathroom that's closed, there's a direct correlation to the increase in the value proposition. But if you're smart, you don't stop there and just say, I have a bathroom, they don't. That's a commodity mindset. You want to look at it through the lens of, you talked about the ADA. It's not always about the person in the wheelchair, while it is sometimes. A lot of times it's about Just think of it from a lens of somebody coming using and just saying, I have a big, wide open bathroom. Okay. There's more value with that. Think about the mom that has 2 little kids that she can't leave out in the laundromat. She needs to bring them in the bathroom with her. I mean, there's a million different ways you can attack this conversation that for some reason our industry doesn't want to do. And that's changing. And people like you are an example of that, being willing to learn, willing to have that conversation. So I hope the audience understands when you brought that up. I don't lose sight of that. I wanted to hone in on that for a minute there. And I know from seeing just photos and videos of your store that you did that in other ways. Do you have any other examples? What's the washers and dryers you put in that store?
We put all the Hipsch 200G equipment in there.
Okay.
And that was from just a throughput situation, a throughput calculation on like, hey, how can we, and once again, it's adding value. Sometimes there's more than one motivation to do something. Our motivation was we have a better looking machine. We have a faster extracting machine, so we can get throughput up, which means we can cut the number of machines down, serve the same amount of people, and get them out quicker. Time is money. People, they don't love being at laundromats, no matter how nice you make it, right? I could have, gold inlaid wallpaper. They don't want to hang around any longer than they have to. So, so we did all Hipsch stuff. And I think the point you touched on is huge. When I was doing my research, deciding if I wanted to turn this building back into a laundromat, because there was no infrastructure that was really saved other than the water. That was basically it. We had a recent experience from building our house where we needed to do laundry, and we're not typical laundromat customers, but we not only saw that this one in town in Homedale was just a joke. A lot of the ones in the main town, we have Boise right here, and there's some beautiful ones there, but in the surrounding towns nearest us, they're lacking. Like you said, if a mom is in there and needs to change a diaper, most of them, it's on the changing table, on the folding table. There's no changing table. Like, well, who's your main customer? Right? They're moms.
Yep.
They have kids. So my wife and I, we went around to laundromats, and I picked every one of them, of the good and bad apart. And I said, what are the components that we need to have so that when people walk in, they're wowed? And I was blown away when we opened. We have a lot of RVers coming through. We're on a I-95 corridor and the I-84 corridor, and we have a lot of RV parks around. And we've been told by multiple full-time RVers that travel the nation, that we have one of the nicest laundromats they've ever been in. Mm-hmm. And it's a little 1,600 square foot laundromat, but it doesn't take that much more in terms of dollar amount to have value, to bring together something that people are, they don't own the machines, but they feel a little bit of pride when they walk in and they see a nice machine, nice vending, nice facility. We feel the same thing when we walk into somebody else's business. You've all done that. We walk in and say, wow, or we say, wow. Those are two different reactions, right? And so that's what we try to encompass. And we try to do things as, the credit card readers on the machines. We have a motion activated remote circulation system for our tankless water heaters. So we try to go the green route also. From an economic perspective, it makes sense. So we went all tankless. So the second somebody walks in, automatic doors open up, motion kicks on the water heater, so there's hot water instantly. I mean, once again, nobody wants to pay my upcharge of 50 cents for hot water and then have to wait for a 2-inch line all the way from the water heaters that's got a slug of cold water in it, right? Like, you paid for hot water. When you open that door, you want to feel heat. Mm-hmm. At least I would, So I want hot water right there at the machine.
Absolutely. When it comes to the layout of the store, can you describe that and why you laid it out the way you did? Size of your aisles, entrance, where you place certain machines, what size machines you have, things like that.
Sure. So I did a lot of talking to guys like yourself that own stores, because once again, mentorship is key. Like knowing that I don't know enough, I talk to a lot of people, including my distributor, Zach. He's out of Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, with Rhino Laundry. Okay. And he helped me with the layout. He kept telling me bigger is better. And boy, I'm glad I listened. I would have loved to have put a 100-pound machine in there. I think it would have been hard to justify, but we haven't. We have 180, 260s, 240s, a 30 and 420s. And so there, it's not we went with a similar layout that was there before. But what we did is put our biggest machine right by the door, because it's neat. The first time, you can always tell the first timers, right, when they walk in. But they'll usually walk in and say, wow. And they go right to that big machine. And then they'll walk the aisle looking at, and they act like they're looking at machines, but they're looking at the prices of every single machine, right, on the way down. And so that's another thing we liked about the hitch is we can set, time of day pricing. We can set a base price. So our base wash is as cheap or cheaper. Now, Dave and I have talked about this. It's not about having the cheapest, right? But we are competitive on our base wash. But at the end of the day, we get a lot of upcharges that people voluntarily select extra wash, extra rinse, and bring that revenue per spin up. Mm-hmm. So we like to have those options. And then we have reversing dryers, which is another value add. That's if you ever have your sheets, I call it the hot pocket, except it's hot on the outside and your sheets are wet on the inside because they're all wadded up. So I like the idea of the reversing dryer. And I didn't even, it seems strange, I guess, but I didn't even look at the price of the non-reversing dryers because it didn't matter. It's one of those things like, are you going to bring the value or aren't you? Mm-hmm. And if I had to spend, I don't know what I spent extra, maybe a couple grand over the price of the non-reversing dryers. At the end of the day, 5 years from now, that $5,000 doesn't matter. What matters is the repeat customers that come every single week, and that won't go anywhere. There's not room now for another mat to come in and close me down because they did it better. I did the best I could.
Yeah. I want to go back for a second because I think this is important when we're talking to laundromat owners that are in smaller markets, and 3,500 people in a town would be definitely probably everybody's category of a small market. What are these towns that you're serving around you, and what are their just rough populations? Because I think what a lot of times people do, and you probably see this on Facebook groups and might have even saw these questions yourself when you were thinking, can a town of 3,500 justify what I'm going to spend on this laundromat? I always tell people it's not always about the 3,500 in that town. If you got 3,500 in a town 15 minutes north, south, east, and west, you have to take all those into account. Now, if they have a Jesse Denton laundromat in it, then maybe you want to understand you're not going to drag people from that market. But most small towns don't have a laundromat at all. And if they do, it's almost always a zombie mat and not reinvested in. And so you're really looking at a market of hypothetically 20,000, because as you know, and I used to live in the country, when you live in the country, it's not a big deal to drive 15, 20 minutes. People do it all the time for all kinds of things they need. So to drive 20 minutes when you live in that environment to go to the laundromat isn't a big deal, especially if you don't have one in your town. What were your competitors like in your area?
So we really didn't, we didn't have a direct competitor except for that one in a little town, but we're 15 minutes from a town of 80,000 people, and it connects to others that are larger. Boise being one of them. There's in the Boise metro, there's over 1 million people, I believe.
And you're how far from that?
We're 15 minutes.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't realize that.
15, 18 minutes. Yeah. So not from Boise, but from Caldwell is our nearest town. And it's about 80,000. And my distributor told me the same thing you did, that, you're going to pull people from outside areas. And my reaction was like, yeah, I'll believe when I see it. Mm-hmm. And boy, how you know is you're looking at your refund slips. If my change machine meets somebody and I'm looking at the town, I'm like, where is that? And I look on a map and they're 40 minutes away, and it's crazy that you can pull in, with value, you can pull people in from farther distances than I would have ever believed possible. Mm-hmm. We're working on opening up a second location in we'll call it a neighboring town. It's got a zombie mat in it, and it's basically identical demos as the one we have here. We are pulling a few people from that town, but it's right for the picking, and it's a wash, rinse, repeat of what we've already done. So we're looking to open one up there, and then we have our eyes set on a third town now as well.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. That's great to hear, man. It's a big part of why me and Carla do what we do. A lot of people think we do this to make money. And the reality is we do it because there was a time in life where I thought I was going to own the world. I was going to own every laundromat in the world. And then Carla informed me that I wasn't going to do that, I guess. And so at some point I had to, give in to the boss. I said, all right, I can't own every laundromat in town. And then in the United States. And I said, okay, what can I do? What I can do is teach the things that I've learned over 12 years in the industry at this point, how I became successful, teach those to people that have a similar mindset, similar goals, want to serve their communities like you, Jesse. And they can take those things and they can really change communities. And obviously your family will financially benefit from this as well, which just makes me even happier because you've not only changed lives in your communities, but now maybe the things that we've shared in other people, like my friend Jordan Berry over at Laundromat Resource and the CLA, other people that are bringing value to this industry. That's how we elevate the industry. So when I use a cliche tagline like, hey, I'm working every day to elevate our industry, this is an example of it. It's not me doing it, it's us doing it. And that's exciting for me to hear because I have a feeling that if you were successful in the first one, your propensity to be successful in the second, third, and fourth is pretty high as well. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And doing what you do, like I get let me back up. I'm not, I don't have any knowledge. I didn't have any epiphanies in the middle of the night and get my pen and paper and scribble down investment ideas. I have learned from others. I have not reinvented the wheel. I've taken advice that other people, such as yourself, such as Mike Maloney and Ken McElroy and Robert Kiyosaki, that they have taught me. And then, it's weird after you learn these things and you start doing it, people start coming to you. And it's a really cool feeling to be able to give back and to, and that sounds cliche also, but, that if people are struggling financially, and from a 50,000 foot view, I can look and say, well, you need to change this and we need to strengthen your balance sheet. And if we can simply move the assets, get rid of these liabilities and get more things in the asset column, it's for them to come back a year later. It's a great feeling. And a kid that I call him a kid, he's only a few years younger than me, but we started working together and I'm representing him selling in real estate. And I've talked him out of more deals than we've ever talked him into. And I have a text that I still save a screenshot of that he sent me probably 2 years ago. That was like, I can't believe it. I finally quit my W-2 job. I'm a full-time real estate investor thanks to you. And it gave me such a high to know that like this guy is now out flipping and he's making passive income, right? I'm a passive income investor. I don't want to work for my money. Mm-hmm. And to see somebody else like hit that goal, which was a goal of theirs, it's just awesome and it feels good. So that's why I wanted, agree to come on here and meet with you. And it's awesome what you're doing for the industry. And like you said, the information that you have and that you've learned and are passing on can go from industry to industry. It really can.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to go be on here today, Jesse. Everyone that's listening to this episode, I want to remind you, this is going to be coming out in the middle of January, and you still have time to register for the Laundromat Millionaire Conference. It's March 2nd through the 4th. It's in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. A lot of things that Jesse's talked about. We've talked on the phone. We've talked on text, Facebook groups. He's listened to our podcast, things like that. But what it boils down to is anytime we as a community, an entrepreneurial community, get an opportunity to network together, that's powerful. Now, if we're networking on a webinar, that's powerful. The most powerful form of networking I have ever witnessed, and I've learned 10 times more from that than every other aspect combined, is in-person networking. Keynote speeches, roundtable discussions, expert panel discussions, just having a shoot from the hip conversation over breakfast, lunch, or dinner. All these things are going to be happening at the conference, and that's why we're putting it on. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to throw a plug in there for the conference. I don't know if Jesse's going to be able to make it or not, but we plan on doing this every year. And so the fact of the matter is there will be years some people can't make it and other years when they can. But I want you guys to understand that this is a value of an industry coming together, and that's what Carla and I are trying to create as we create these different assets like the conference and things like that. Jesse, before we let you go today, I want want to have you back on the show in a couple years, because I have a feeling you're going to have 2 or 30 laundromats at that point, and we're going to want to see how that's going for you. So I hope you're going to be able to do that. But in the meantime, if people want to reach out to you and connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably email would be best. My email's a little long, but it's Jesse, which is Jesse at Jade, like the stone, JADERE investments.com. And I enjoy helping people. I don't have anything to sell. I just, if there's, I just get that fire in my belly when there's some 20-year-old kid, that's got a few bucks and he's just got that drive. Those are the kind of people that I like to help and what have you, because I've had a few help me along the way, and I just like to see everybody succeed. And so yeah, if anybody'd like to reach out, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, we appreciate you doing that. Well, listen, everyone, I know you're probably going to rewind this episode, go back to it, listen to it again, take some more notes, reach out to Jesse. He's offered his email address, which is very kind of him. But we appreciate you all being here today, and we will see you all next week for another episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. Take care, everyone.